So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Full disclosure, this is my first time speaking at WordCamp US, so I'm pretty excited about this opportunity. But what I want to share with you today is bigger than just journalism. It's about responsibility. Because when we build for newsrooms, we're not just shipping features, we're shipping the ability for truth to reach people. So right at the moment when they need it the most. So during this talk, you'll hear some stories from newsrooms. You'll see patterns, rather technical, human, and ethical. And I'll share some stories and some patterns that you can also use in your own projects outside journalism. And because this is Showcase Day, I want to leave you inspired by the things that WordPress can help you accomplish. And it's already accomplishing with other sites. But before we dive into those newsroom challenges, let me share a bit about myself. I'm Ramon. I live in Panama City, in Panama, which is a relatively small country in Central America, right next to Colombia and Costa Rica. Quick fact about my country is that there's a point in a mountain there called Volcán Barú. It's a volcano actually, where you can see both oceans on a clear day. So if you time it right, you can see it like the sun rise up and one ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and then set it on the other ocean. So pretty fun detail. But yeah, I joined Automatic a few years ago. I worked with WordPress VIP for about 3.5 years as a customer success engineer. And during this time, I was focusing on large enterprise customers and also like large media outlets, trying to keep their sites up during their most critical moments. But now I'm part of Newspack, where I focus on product engineering. And for those of you who haven't heard about Newspack, it's an open source, all-in-one platform that helps news organizations to run modern and scalable WordPress. It gives smaller publisher and local and independent outlets to run the same kind of modern and scalable WordPress that large enterprises media companies have. But it's in a way that is more sustainable and accessible, helping them to publish great stories, develop a loyal audience, and keep their business going. So whether it's global networks or local independent outlets, I think how much they struggle to work under pressure and the pressure that they face usually, and how much also powers can help them to overcome these things. And that brings us to the bigger picture, which is why this even matter. What's really at stake when news sites fail? And you've probably seen this at some point or another. But the thing is that when news sites break, it's not just like downtime. It means also like people lose access to trusted information at the exact moment where they need it the most. It could be, this pressure can come from many contexts like elections, natural disasters, public emergencies, and these moments when journalists matter the most are exactly the moments where the system behind are the most vulnerable in some cases. When those systems fail in these scenarios, it's not just like a technical glitch, but it's also a failure of responsibility, because when the truth can reach people in time, also the democracy suffers. And also, like when that happens, citizens turn to social media for facts, and when trusted sources fail, the misinformation then fills that void. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about an example how an editor life could be in a normal day. 7 a.m., the editor is just checking overnight developments, nothing unusual yet. By 8:30, breaking story drops. Traffic to the site multiplies by tenfold in just a few minutes. By 8:37, the server buckles under the load, and the pages stop loading, dashboard freezes, chaos in Slack. And by 8:45, the same story is live, but on a competitor site. So this is the nightmare scenarios. This doesn't happen every day, but it's something that it could happen, and it's also in the back of the mind of the editors and the people that run the sites. Because the newsroom might be working tirelessly to report the story, but the technology becomes sometimes the bottleneck. And instead of breaking news, you have like a broken infrastructure. And the impact of this is huge. You don't just lose minutes, you lose the audience, you lose trust, and sometimes you lose even revenue that never is going to come back. And for newsrooms that are already stretched thin, that could be devastating. So if this is the reality, the question becomes how we keep newsroom from ending up in the wrong side of this timeline. So we just see what happens when the technology fails, but here's the harder truth also. Even when the tech works, the people behind it are disappearing. In 2002, there was about 40 journalists for every 100,000 people. Today, that number has been reduced to only 8. That means fewer eyes in corruption, fewer watchdogs, fewer voices telling the stories of our communities. So, and when we zoom out, you see how dramatic this collapse is. As I mentioned before, it's like a 75% drop in less than a quarter of a century, like about 23 years. This data, by the way, comes from MUC Local Journalist Index from this year. Even in counties that don't have like full coverage, most of them are already below the low national average, 97% of them. And about one third of these counties in the US don't have not even one local journalist fully dedicated to that. And that represents more than 1,000 counties in the US, because they have like about 3,100 or something like that. But yeah, it becomes even clearer when you look at specific places, because Vermont, for example, is the leading state in the US, but even though it's like well below the average that was, the national average that was in 2002, if you look at larger counties like LA, there are about 3.6 journalists per 100,000 people. And if you look at Riverside, it's 1.7 journalists per 100,000 people, which is the worst major county in America in that sense. So if the best state is failing and some of the largest cities have almost nothing, it tells us one thing: the crisis is universal. No community is immune. And this is why WordPress matters more than ever. So what if technology didn't fail journalists, but instead save it? We talk about the collapse, about how fragile the journalism has become. And here's the paradox: the same technology that often frustrates journalists could actually save them. What if the tools just didn't fail under pressure and just became the very things that empower these newsrooms? And the truth is, the technology that already powers 43% of the web, which is WordPress, can help build newsrooms that just don't survive, but actually thrive. So why WordPress? Why is this the platform so many publishers trust? Well, it's not the answer because it's perfect, but it's powerful because it's flexible enough to adapt, open enough to be extended, mature enough to trust, and with a community large enough like you to support it. And it's also already proven at a scale. So the question is, choosing the platform, the web already chooses like the platform. The 43% of the web already choose the platform, but the question is, how do we make it work under pressure? So I'm going to be talking about 5 different things. We will be moving through 5 parts, and in this talk, and each one is going to be showing a different way that WordPress supports journalism and what other areas can also learn from it. So the first part is about newsroom's most stressful moment, the breaking news, when every second counts. And the goal here is to see what patterns were under extreme pressure and how we can keep sites online, and with the traffic multiplies instantly. So think about this, about the foundation. If the sites can't stay up, nothing else is going to matter. So let's look at the architecture and practices that make WordPress more resilient when the world is watching. So this is a basic, simplified architecture. This is like a blueprint of how fast and resilient WordPress could be built. And basically, users just request a website. That website is served, or that page is served from a CDN, which is usually geographically closer to the user location. There is some caching layer in between. It could be in the form of page cache, like object cache, or different type of things that I'm not going to go deep into this. And then you have the WordPress server, which is actually the one running the actual PHP code, and also sourcing the data from the database. And In the ideal scenario, we want 99% of the traffic or the request be served from this part, from the CNN layer, the one that is closer to the user. And what slips past that goes into cache, and then only a tiny fraction should actually be reaching the actual WordPress server and the database. So this pattern is not unique to journalism sites, but in breaking news is often the difference between being online and going dark. So every layer matters in this case. If you miss optimizations at one stage, the loads shift to the next one, and failures usually cascade quickly. So during elections, for example, some sites has handled hundreds of thousands concurrent readers, and you know what the WordPress server was doing most of the time? Nothing, because it was just serving the editors who were publishing the new content, and the readers never even touched WordPress directly. So that's the power of this architecture. So when it works, your most critical infrastructure is actually the less stressed. So let's break down what this means in practice. It's starting at the edge and then moving deeper. So the first pattern I want to talk about is just smart caching validation. So this is kind of PHP / pseudocode. But basically, once you have caching in place, the real trick is the caching validation in this case, because you don't want to purge the entire site when someone hits publish, or it's because it's too expensive and defeats the caching purpose. Instead, we want to be surgical about what we really invalidate. So in this case, we are just purging the home page and purging the post itself. In practice, you might need to purge some other places like archive pages or category pages, but everything else should stay cached 99% of the time, and the site should keep blastingly fast, but only the essential parts are being refreshed. And this is one of the small but critical patterns, because it makes the difference a site that collapses under a load and the one from one to the other that scales gracefully during breaking news. So if we fix what's happening after publish, now we can look into what each page sends. So the second pattern I want to talk about is, I call it strips essentials. And basically, and not every page needs scripts or style sheets. We should be like selectively asset loading in this case, because in breaking news, you want speed above everything else. That means you can safely turn off heavy assets like extra analytics packages, large fonts libraries, or style bundles that are not needed for every page. So every script you remove is one less request and faster time to first byte. And this is about reducing overhead when the seconds truly matter. When someone's checking election results or emergencies, they don't care about the fancy fonts. They care about getting information quickly. So, and beyond code into optimizations, building for breaking news also means designing workflows that adapt in real time. So I want to share 3 more examples here. They all fall under the umbrella of removing dependencies. And basically, the first one is a pattern that has saved countless sites during traffic spikes. But basically, you remove all external dependencies from your critical path. When traffic is high, disable all the external calls completely, like social share counts, like recommendation widgets, live weather data. They all can wait. And even in normal mode, we should be setting aggressive timeouts like 500 milliseconds in the example. Because if an external service can respond that fast, it shouldn't block the rendering of your page. So, sorry, think about it. It's an external service that, if an external service can take down your site, if you don't wait for it. So your content is what really matters. Everything else is just an enhancement in this case. So it's not enough to just disable features sometimes. So we need to be also smarter about how we handle these services. So this second pattern that I want to talk about in this section is about deferring some things to the client side. When you need some external data, you can move it from the backend to the client side and avoid, for example, in this, like, we are not fetching the recommendations from an API on the PHP process, but instead we're just like rendering a static div with an instruction for the front end to actually go and request that data, and that moves this dependency from the critical path of when rendering the page. The page is going to load instantly, the enhancements are going to come later, and user gets the content immediately instead of waiting for slow APIs. So this is progressive enhancement in action because the core content goes first and the extras when they're ready. And this leads us to the final pattern, which is basically all external APIs or heavy process, you can move it to a background process, because that way you are not blocking also the page rendering. So in this example, for example, you have three options. Where you need to request data from an external source, you can queue it, cache it, or skip it. And WordPress already has the APIs for this, like that allows you scheduling the process for later, like a cron job. And always, in the meantime, we can always return the cache or default values immediately. So this one principle can prevent 90% of the performance issues during traffic spikes. Because this pattern works, but they only matter if your newsroom can actually use the platform on top of the code when it breaks. I wanted to also talk about the human side of TechName. Because up until now, we talk about servers, about caching, about performance and speed, but the truth is that most newsroom staff are not engineers. Journalists are experts at reporting, editing, storytelling, but not debugging cache headers. So if the tools we build are confusing, are fragile, or require workarounds, they will break at the worst possible moment. And so building for newsrooms means like building for non-technical users, and we have to always keep that in the back of our mind. Because simplicity, clarity, resilience matter as much as the raw performance that we get from the site. So let's look at how newsrooms workflow actually collide with technology and why our designs need to account for that. So this is obviously a hypothetical example, but let's imagine you have like 47 fields, 12 tabs, five plugins, and it can take you like 10 plus minutes just to publish one single story. And this is cognitive overload. You've probably seen this in WordPress sites, like meta boxes everywhere, separate fields for print headline, web headline, social headline. And remember, these are journalists on a deadline. They are not developers. They don't need to know about these things. Like we should be always aiming to make their life easier. So thinking about they should be thinking about their sources, their facts, their narrative, not in which of the 12 meta boxes or tabs contain the SEO settings. So every extra field we add while we are designing is a chance for error also. Every tab is time wasted. Every minute spent fighting with the CMS is a minute not spent in journalism. And this complexity doesn't slow things down. It kills productivity in some cases, and increases also the amount of mistakes that editor can make when the speed matters the most. So let me show what happens if we simplify this. We can have just a single screen with clear sections, small defaults, and it now takes like 30 seconds just to publish, because they can focus on the content, not on all the logic behind it. For this, we can achieve this using Gutenberg blocks to create newsroom-specific patterns, like breaking news is a block, donation prompt is also a block, newsletter sign-up is also a block, and that's what we also try to do in Newspack, like make their life as simple as possible. And what is the result of this? The editors just publish. They don't navigate complex UI, they don't hunt through tabs. What it used to take 10 minutes, it could now take 30 seconds, as I mentioned. But getting to this simplicity isn't always easy. We have learned along the way like some hard lessons about this. Like one could be over-engineering, because sometimes our nature as thinkers, as developers, as designers, it will be like to build custom everything instead of using the WordPress patterns that people are already familiar with and know. Also would be under communication, pushing surprises updates like, hey, we improved things, but meanwhile editors can't find anything because we shift things around. Also assuming knowledge, like, just use a shortcode. They don't know what's a shortcode. They should really know about this. They're journalists, not developers. And also ignoring feedback. We tend to think like, oh, they'll get used to it, but spoiler alert, they don't. They just find workarounds or stop using the feature entirely. So what is the actual fix? The actual fix for this? It's humbling. It's just to sit with actual users for one day, just one day. Watch them work, feel their frustration when they can't find the the features buttons, see then copy-paste from Word, and watch your beautiful editor breaks. So after that, you probably will want to redesign everything, or at least many parts of your editorial experience, and it will actually work because now you're thinking about the users you have, not the ones you wish you have. So, and this lesson extends beyond just UI design. It applies to every aspect of building for newsrooms, including accessibility, which is a legal requirement because ADI compliance is mandatory for public-facing websites. News organizations are particularly scrutinized, and lawsuits are expensive, are damaging the reputation. And it's also a moral imperative because news is a public service at the end of the day. Everyone deserves access to information. Democracy also depends on informed citizens. So excluding people from news access is also excluding them in some way from civic participation. So in practice, this means adapting to screen readers, writing alt text for images, using clear headline structures, and maintaining stored color and contrast. And WordPress already provides some tools for making it the most accessible possible with the less work required. So, but these same practices make the sites easier for everyone. They improve readability when you are under stress, for example, and you're just trying to scan the page for the relevant content. It also leads to better design overall that usually, like any person or person with accessibility needs, they can all consume your content more easily. And this human-first approach becomes even more critical as newsrooms adopt new technologies. Because if we get the human part wrong, technology is just going to amplify those mistakes at the scale. So I want to talk a bit about the kind of a spicy thing, AI in the newsrooms. This subtitle here is crucial, speed without losing trust. Because here's the dilemma. Here's the dilemma that every newsroom faces today. AI can make you incredibly fast, and it can help you transcribe interviews in seconds, can help you generate headlines, moderate comments, etc. But journalists' entire currency is trust. And unlike a tech startup, newsroom can move fast and break things, because when people don't trust their news sources, democracy itself starts to fail, and starts to fracture also. So the question is whether AI will change things, because it's already changing the way some newsrooms operate. The question is, how do we harness this power without destroying what makes journalism trust? How do we get this speed without losing the truth? And I just want to start with by trying to understand what readers actually think about AI in news, because the data might surprise you. So this data is from Trusting News on what readers find acceptable uses of AI. And look, it's all technical assistance. There are things like spell check, transcription, translation, but notice that even the safe use requires human intervention. Readers aren't comfortable enough with AI running completely the show and unsupervised, even for grammar. But there's a middle ground that is a bit more complex. The maybe, or with guardrails, is a bit interesting, because things like data analysis, headlines, story summaries, all potentially useful, but only with human review. And this is where AI can truly help newsrooms work faster. But the human journalist remains accountable for every action, every decision that it's taking. So this why it's conditional? Because they touch the editorial judgment, but can be helpful with an oversight. And then we have the last category, which are the ones absolutely unacceptable. And basically, you see here AI reading stories, AI anchors, anything without a human review. And the message is clear. Readers will accept what makes journalists better, but not AI that makes journalism unnecessary. So no human review can fix replacing the human judgment entirely. And why never? Because this crosses the line from assistance to replacement. Anything that replaces human journalists in core functions is not accepted at all. So the pattern is clear. We should build with AI that enhances journalists, never replace them. And here's a pattern that we can get from that, the human in the loop pattern. Sorry for if the font size is too small, but I'm also sharing the slide via QR code at the end. So basically, the pattern here is to never auto-publish things that come from AI. In this example here in the left side, you have AI transcribing, an example of an AI hypothetically transcribing an audio file via an API or something. And that's the efficiency gain. But look at the right side. Instead of like publishing it automatically, we just update the content but put it into a draft status. And we also like enrich the post data with a flag that indicates that human review is required, and also like the confidence level about the AI the level of uncertainty that AI had when doing that transcription. And then the journalist can take the decision of make adjustment or not, depending on what it needs help or not. So this is just some good ethics in general. This is just good user experience. So when the AI is 95% confident, the journalist knows they can probably approve quickly. And in other contexts, like when it's 60% confident, you need to work more on it and more carefully. This code pattern enforces that the trust boundaries that readers are very expecting. But having the human accountability is only half of the equation. The other half is transparency. And we also have some data on this. I don't know if it's a bit small, but yeah. This data is also from Trusting News on disclosure expectations. And even things like translation, the most accepted use of AI, 43% of readers say disclosure is extremely important for this. For writing news story, like 83% want disclosure. That's, if you assume the very and extremely important numbers. Also, for generating media, 86% want disclosure. So no AI use gets a free pass. Transparency is expected across all applications of AI. And the more editorialist it does, the higher the disclosure expectation is. So we need to build transparency into every AI feature from day one. Because readers are not saying that don't use AI. They are saying, tell us when you are using AI. So if disclosure is what readers want, how do we do it right? And there's a paradox here, because in the same study, most readers say that they want disclosure, but at the same time, they also say that AI's labels lower their trust. So the way out of that tension is to be more specific according to the results, not less specific. So we should be telling people like exactly what the AI did, like who reviewed it, and how confident the system was on it. For example, you can add a disclaimer that says AI is transcribed using Whisper, review by reporting name on date X, view edit trail also with a link there. And the edit trail can show the chain of from the original to the AI output and the human edit to the final version of the article. And if the confidence dips below a certain threshold, we can highlight those sections for manual review, and that both speeds the workflow and also like signals caution. So also we should be not burying these disclaimers in the footer. We can put it near the byline or in a small disclosure block about the content in the same spot every time, so readers can get used to it when it's actually being enhanced, when an article is being enhanced by AI. And you can also link to a policy. I've seen some sites also publishing about this. They have a dedicated policy page for talking about the AI usage. But the pattern is simple. Just be specific about the task, show the human oversight, rebuild the confidence sometimes, keep another trail. And transparency like this it's not going to slow you down. It's just going to let readers see how the work was done, and which is how you keep trust while using AI to move faster. So transparent system keeps speed while protecting trust. But since we talk about speed, we talk about trust, we talk about AI, but here's the reality. None of that matters if you can't keep the lights on. So newsrooms face constant revenue pressure, and every technical decision you make, from hosting costs to performance optimizations to platform choices, is going to directly impact how that newsroom survived another year, for example. So this section is more about the patterns that don't just make newsroom work better today, but also make sustainable in the long term. So let's start with the harsh economic reality every newsroom faces. Here's the revenue reality. The old model was simple, just stack at Unix, chase click, the more page views, the more pennies. That logic turns editors into traffic managers and treats quality as a cost. It also trains readers to skim and bounce, and that's a race to the bottom at the end. So modern newsrooms that survive, they need to diversify. They might have subscription, donations, sponsorships, but the goal is not a single magic string. The goal is a direct relationship that can support many streams over time. And that's why the platform matters, because you need the flexibility to try models side by side without having to rebuild the entire system. You can have meta paywalls, member blogs, donation prompts, newsletter capture, but all of these are just tools. But here's what we have learned so far. Survival is not about algorithms, it's about relationships. And this is the lesson to decide who survives. Survival equals relationships, not algorithms, because platform and AI can keep changing the landscape, but loyalty is going to be the constant in this case. Every revenue stream sits on top of trust, so a subscription only renews if reader feels connected enough with your content, with your newsrooms. Donation is only going to happen if the mission resonates with you. Even attendance to events, for example, only grows when people feel part of that community. So from a product perspective, think of WordPress not just as a publishing tool in this case, but also as a relationship system. You can measure and improve the signals that predict this loyalty by, for example, it could be visit frequency, depth of reading, newsletter signups, email open rate, etc. But these are just metrics that keep a newsroom alive. Those relationships show up as trust signals that drive revenue. And how a publisher diversifies these sources of revenue in this case? It could be subscriptions, as I mentioned before, donations, newsletters, events, and grants, for example. And what each of these means is that, for example, subscription means that I believe in you enough to pay every month for your content. A donation means I believe in your mission. An event means I want to show up in person. And the grants also is an external validation of the credibility and impact that your organization has. So the tech stack matters, but the heart of sustainability is loyalty at the end of the day. And it only works with connection. Each of these streams works only if reader feels connected enough with the newsroom. And also without relationships, the smartest tool, the best CMS is gonna fail. It's not gonna last forever. So now tying it back to the AI motif that seems ever present these days, we are also in an age where AI can churn infinite content. So the scarce thing right now is not articles, but it's trust. So these models from subscription to newsletters only work if trust is present, which brings us to how do we build platforms that actually last. And there's, for example, the migration moment that every newsroom at some point, or every site at some point might be facing. Legacy content in these cases should be preserved because everything needs to work. We cannot afford like zero downtime during the switch, and we have to be testing thoroughly because no margin for error but there's no margin for error with an entire archive for our newsrooms. So there are a few strategies for this, like starting small and then scale up. But also things like URL preservation are critical because broken links are going to kill that SEO and also the reader's trust. So we might need to keep all systems running in parallel until everything we make sure that everything is working on the new system, for example, and always have a rollout plan ready. But this is also why the platform's choice matters for sustainability. Open platforms like WordPress or Newspack made this easier than proprietary systems because they do not log you in. And when that migration moment comes, it looks like this, like a simple export command. But this command represents years of journalism, preserved bylines, is maintaining the relationships you build with readers and keep that trust intact. So this is why WordPress matters for sustainability, because open standards mean you own your content. You're never trapped by a platform. So this is what platform sustainability looks like in practice. And also, we can talk about performance and ethics, because the final sustainability pattern we want to talk about is that speeds actually accessibility. Because when your site is slow, you're not just providing bad user experience, but you're also excluding people with limited data plans, people with older devices, people in underserved communities. They have the same need to other people to access reliable information. So the real impact is measurable, because load time reductions directly affect the bounce rate, the reader engagement increases with faster sites, and the search visibility depends on performance metric, because that means like if you have a better score in Core Web Vitals, that means your performance is better and discoverability also increases. And there's an ethical dimension to all of this. Fast sites are more democratic because they remove the barriers for civic participation and access to truth. So there's a sustainability connection in all of this, because performance also lowered the hosting cost, but also improved conversion rates. So you have this feature that is serving both things, like the mission and also the business. And when we zoom out, you can see how these performance choices ripple into large lessons beyond just the newsroom, which is the final part I want to talk about today. Because the issues that we've seen today are not just journalist problems. They are high-stake content problems. So, for example, you can have an e-commerce site during flash sales facing the same constraints, school sites during emergencies, community platforms during crisis. They have the same pressure. They all face the same pressure, so we can therefore apply some of the similar solutions to this. So when system fails at this moment, it's just not downtime, it's exclusion in some ways. So what are the universal patterns we can extract from newsroom challenges? These are the key takeaways that might travel more than beyond journalism. Think of them as design principles you can apply everywhere. I'm not going to go deep into each of those, but newsrooms in some sense are like canaries in a coal mine. If it breaks there, it's going to break anywhere. So those are patterns. Those things that we have seen are patterns, but pattern only matters if we apply them with the right mindset. And Newsroom have taught us a mindset that goes beyond tools and technology, a way of asking tougher questions about what we build and why. And that's the real shift I want to close on. Because the techniques matter, but framing them in the right mindset makes them powerful. So take the time to ask yourself when you're building, when you're planning, when you're designing, or even when testing, what is this needed to work like a crisis? What if the person updating it wasn't technical? And what if this was someone's only source of information? Or also, what if it has to last for 10 years? This question will help us shape, or help you shape how we build towards resilience, simplicity, and longevity. And so if we try to turn this mindset into a simple framework, I would like to call it like 3 layers of resilience. Basically, the base one is layer 1. It's about protecting the core. So think about the system behaving well under stress, keeping the lights on when the API fails. And the goal is simple. Just readers get always the story, even if a dependency or external service fail. So we need to favor predictable fallbacks over perfect features sometimes. You can keep the core safe by failing gracefully, absorbing traffic spikes, and caching aggressively, so reader can get the story even under heavy load. Once the core keeps serving pages, the next layer is about people and accountability, empowering the humans, because resilience is also, there's a human component to it. And we need to make it easy to correct, attribute, and disclose even under stress situations, like corrections data should be first class, not hidden in the sidebar, bylines and role, because bylines and role protect credibility and clarify responsibility. And also, like what we talked about before, like AI needs clear review points and visible labels to maintain or to preserve that trust. So with the core protected and people empowered, we prepare for the days when traffic is not normal at all. We need to plan for crisis. We need to plan for peak days in advance, not during the event. Have a one-switch mode that strips essentials when needed. For example, we develop in Newspack, we develop a mode that can be enabled when there are some like natural disaster situations that will strip the whole site content or the page content is going to be stripped down. No images, no tracking code, no ads, no everything. And it will help serve this page content to when the people need it the most during critical situations. So another thing that we can consider is pre-generating the pages you'll know will matter. So when they are served instantly, for example, like newsrooms or most like entertainment sites, they usually have like obituary pages for public figures, a bit morbid sometimes, but yeah, they all have this information ready. So when the time's right, they just update the details and then just publish. And also in some stress situations, like we can also lower the paywall rules and adapt during emergencies to align also the revenue part with the mission. So these three layers are why these patterns will help newsrooms survive the pressure and why they travel well to any high-stakes site, not only newsrooms. So the last thing I want to talk about is just when technology fails, it's not just servers going dark. It's also there's another dimension to it because it might represent like corrections goes unreported, communities are left uninformed, voices go unheard, and democracy itself is weakened sometimes. And that's the real cause of bad technology. Think about the impact beyond technology. Think about the weight of the responsibility we carry as builders, as designers, as product managers, for example. But also it's also an opportunity to enable important work because at the end of the day, the truth is that code is never neutral. Every line we write either enables a story to be told or silences them. We're not just building websites, we're building infrastructure for democracy. And of course, when I say it that way, it sounds like we are carrying a great responsibility that can feel overwhelming sometimes. But the truth is, we can start small. And I just want to share some practical next steps. These are concrete actions you can take now or on Monday when you get back home after enjoying this beautiful city. Basically, you can start like auditing your cache strategy. You can start testing on your slow network how your site behaves and add performance monitoring. This second one is particularly easy to do. For example, in Chrome, is you go to the browser console, you can like throttle the connection to emulate what the site will behave in a scenario where like the connection is so slow. And then you have some medium effort things that you can say. These don't require like a complete overhaul of your site, but requires a bit more planning. And then you have like the long-term or ongoing things that some steps that you might take, like shadowing your content creators, building with a 10-year horizon in mind, and also contributing back to open source. Sharing the resources and tools is also very helpful for the community. We don't need to be selfish about this, about the things we learn. And also in Newspad, that's also that we empower publishers to share their findings because we have a shared community where they can teach others about the things they've learned and what patterns have worked for them. And they can openly also like ask for help or for opinions on things. So there's responsibility at the end of the day is big, but the path is manageable at the end of the day. And I just want to thank you all for the work that you do, because it really matters. And thank you all for listening. You can contact me there. It's a LinkedIn QR code pointing to, and there's also this slide if you want to scan it. So I'm not going to hold you more because we're all waiting for food. So thank you very much for being with me today. So.